Good evening, Stalking NCT. So Zoe here with Feature Friday. Today we're talking about hoods or head supports on carriers or slings, and how are they used? Do you need head support? So I've got the Lily Baby carrier here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scoop it over my head, and then I'm going to put my arms into my shoulder straps, supporting my baby. And this one, you can see, has this head support here. So it can be really tempting sometimes, if baby's being really nosy, to clip both sides up of this. Okay, now what that's going to do is it's going to mean that your baby can't see anything if you do that. And it can also put undue pressure on their head. So if you feel like you need to have a bit of head support, you can just clip up one side and fold the other side down. And that way they can see more on this side. Also, if once they fall asleep and you've got the sling and carrier down and you've got the hood down like this, if you're finding their head is going backwards, probably means you need to do a pelvic tilt, because if we straighten our spines and our pelvis, our head tends to, or anterior tilt our pelvis, our heads tend to go backwards. Often when we put babies in slings and they're very active and alert, we'll do it nice and tight because we don't want them to, worry, maybe, we just want it really nice and tight and secure. However, when they fall asleep and they lose muscle tone, they need more space to sink into. Not too much space, because we need to make sure that we don't have too much curve and their chin is off their chest rather than coming down. But we want to have their pelvis slightly tilted towards us. So in the sling, you're going to go into here and you're just going to tilt their pelvis towards you. Tilt their pelvis towards you, and that will then stop their head lolling back. And this is really common in back carries. When we have a slightly higher back carry, because often babies are nice and alert and they're active and then they fall asleep. So often if they're on your back, it's quite hard to do these up because you can't necessarily reach. So you can always clip one side up beforehand. Well, or the other option is just go in and do your pelvic tilt, your pelvic tuck. If they're on your back, you're just going to go behind and tilt their pelvis this way towards you. So both times it's either this movement or this movement, okay? And that's normally going to be enough to do their head. If you find there's not enough space in the carrier, you might need to loosen the carrier, do your pelvic tilt, and then tighten your carrier up again around baby so it does remain nice and secure. So strictly speaking, babies do not need head support. Often if you're carrying in arms, you're just going to be supporting them here under their bottom. You don't sometimes feel like you need to give them very much head support, and we will need to make sure that baby's head is nice and clear, so that we can see their airways. So when we do want to use a hood, make sure it's only over one side. If it's enough space to put it over to, you still need, as the carer, to be able to see your baby's nose and mouth is clear of any obstructions. So make sure that you can see that. Generally I would suggest doing one side up rather than both, because that makes that easier to do. And also that pelvic tuck is just absolutely key, especially for newborns, because it really does stop their heads. Some babies don't like their heads being covered, some do. So again, it's just being mindful of those things. We don't want to put pressure on these lovely little soft heads. So strictly speaking, do babies need head support? No. If you are doing an active role, if you have other children, if you are, maybe you're out on dog walks, and you find that you're leaning forward and your baby's head is moving, firstly check that your sling is all nice and tight. This is not tight. I'm just doing it for demo purposes. But if it wasn't, then you go back and you would give this a lovely little tighten, and you would just make sure that your baby doesn't come away from your body when you lean forward. Their head is naturally going to, because their head is quite heavy. If you're finding you're doing that a lot and you're leaning forward, use your hands. You should be able to use one hand. If you're doing something where you need both of your hands, then use your hoods as a short-term solution for that, rather than using it up all the time. So you might clip it up for some periods of time and then take it down for other periods of time. If you have any questions about hoods, obviously different carriers will have different ways of attaching them. So this one, there is clips and it's quite a firm one here. This poppers off, and then this is on sort of elastic, so it's not too fixed. This head support does move. Obviously on connectors and integras, you can open this panel outwards this way and tuck your hood inside. You can roll your hood up to here and then clip it in, so that your baby's face is still clear. So they all do vary depending on the type of carrier that you're looking at, but don't be put off by a carrier that perhaps doesn't have a really structured head support, because strictly speaking, it's not something that we need to overly worry about, as long as we have all of our other things in place that we're looking for a good carry. Any questions? Pop along. Sling Library is now on the 28th of January. You can get in touch with me via the Sling Consultancy Facebook page or on Instagram, and I'm available for consults if anybody needs any extra help. So have a great weekend.